Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It feels like every single day there's just this relentless flood of tech news, right? Information overload is real, and it's easy to feel like you're just constantly trying to catch up. So here's our mission. We take that pile of sources, you've got articles, notes, research, and we pull out the absolute must-know stuff. We hope you get informed, fast, and maybe find a few surprising facts too. Today, we're diving into a whole stack of fresh reports. We've got AI making coding way more accessible, a look inside the Ethereum ecosystem, even the latest in quantum computing. It's really a snapshot of the tech world right now. Lots of aha moments, I think.
Definitely. And what's really fascinating, I find, is how these separate stories, they actually weave together. You start to see the bigger picture of how technology is, well, fundamentally reshaping our lives, the economy, everything. This deep dive should really help you see those threads, maybe think a bit more critically about where things are actually going.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First up, there's this new European unicorn. They're called Lovable, and they're really shaking things up in AI coding. They just pulled in a massive $200 million Series A. That's, big money for that stage. Pushed their valuation to something like $4.8 billion.
Wow. $4.8 billion already. That's significant for AI code generation.
It really is. And their core mission, it's pretty transformative, actually. The co-founders, Anton and Fabian, they basically built this tool for everyone. Think about it. Only about, 1% of people can actually code.
A tiny fraction.
Right. So their goal is to empower the other 99%. And the way it works, users can create what they're calling fully fledged applications. So front end, back end, the whole working app, just using chat or text prompts. It's like describing what you want and poof, it appears.
Sort of like talking your app into existence.
Exactly. So who's using it? It's kind of a cool mix. You've got non-technical folks with great ideas, finally able to build something.
Yeah.
Then there are product managers, maybe semi-technical, who can quickly spin up prototypes. And even, serious tech people using it for weekend projects just to get stuff running fast. It puts creation in more hands.
Yeah, and I think the key takeaway here, the real insight, isn't that developers are suddenly obsolete. That's the immediate fear, right?
Always the question.
But no, it's more about how their roles evolve. AI tools, they abstract more and more of the, let's say, the grunt work of coding. But engineers, they are still absolutely critical. You need them for maintenance, for making sure all these different systems actually work together, and for applying that critical thinking to the really tough engineering problems. It's less about writing every line of code, maybe more about being the architect.
That's a really interesting way to put it, the AI architect. So what kind of new skills become crucial then? System design.
Absolutely. System design, understanding how to integrate AI-generated code safely and effectively. Ethical considerations are huge, too. Debugging these complex systems when they go wrong in unexpected ways, that's where the human element is vital.
And what about folks who maybe don't adapt to that shift?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? The more routine coding tasks, those are likely the first to be heavily automated. So it really pushes people towards upskilling into these more complex areas, or perhaps shifting into adjacent roles like specialized QA or technical project management.
Makes sense. And looking at the investors, like Excel backing Lovable, their strategy seems pretty clear. It's about aligning with the entrepreneurs, building genuinely big companies, and protecting their own investors, their LPs. We even saw something similar with that Scale Meta situation, right, where investors kept a stake even after a team moved. Shows they're betting on the talent long term.
Exactly. It's a strategic game protecting innovation and talent flow.
Okay, so AI gives us this incredible power, but that power also, it raises the stakes on security. Which brings us to our next topic, this Microsoft SharePoint hack. SharePoint, it's everywhere, right? A core Microsoft data management tool.
Tens of thousands of businesses rely on it.
So this vulnerability is potentially massive. Tens of thousands of businesses could be affected. And the timing. This comes about a year after that whole CrowdStrike mess. Remember that? Grounded flights, major disruptions.
Oh, yeah, that was messy. Put Microsoft's security division under a ton of pressure.
Exactly. So they were already feeling the heat, and now this drops just before their earnings call. Not ideal.
No, definitely not. And what's really significant here is just how critical these data systems are. They hold so much sensitive stuff. This specific hack seems to mainly hit users running SharePoint on-premise. So not the cloud version, but the one they manage themselves.
Which maybe they should have updated, perhaps.
Well, potentially. Hindsight's 20/20, right? But the impact is serious. Hackers could basically get in, move between files, maybe get into Teams chats, pull emails. Who knows what else? It's the kind of thing that definitely makes customers pause and take a second look at sticking with Microsoft for security. Might make them rethink their whole setup.
Yeah, I bet. So Microsoft's responded, sent out patching instructions and so on. But like you said, the timing right before earnings, you can bet this will be a hot topic on their calls. Puts extra pressure on their whole security story.
For sure. Investors will be asking tough questions.
Okay, so from enterprise security and big tech earnings, let's pivot. Let's jump into the pretty dynamic world of digital assets. There's a new player making noise. It's called the Ether machine. And they're eyeing a huge public listing, something like $1.5 billion.
The Ether machine. Okay, interesting name. What's their angle?
Well, they're making it clear they're not just like a buy and hold treasury thing for crypto. They call themselves an institutional vehicle. They actively manage Ether to get risk-adjusted returns. And they do this through a few things. Staking, obviously, but also restaking using Ethereum's proof of stake to secure other middleware, kind of double dipping on a yield.
Right, leveraging the base layer security for other protocols.
Exactly. And also using Ether as, they say, pristine collateral in DeFi to generate even more yield. They contrast this with, say, ETFs that don't yield anything, or ETPs that maybe only do staking at half capacity.
Okay, so actively managed yield generation on Ether.
Yeah. And their big selling point, they claim they've amassed the Avengers of Ethereum. Basically an unbeatable tech team.
The Avengers of Ethereum, huh? Bold claim.
Very bold. We'll see. But it speaks to the broader vision for Ethereum itself.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting, beyond just this one company. The proponents, they genuinely see Ethereum as like the next generation of the internet, because unlike Bitcoin, which really just has Bitcoin on its ledger, Ethereum can tokenize, well, almost anything. Infinite assets.
Right, like stablecoins, real-world assets.
Exactly. Stablecoins, land titles, stocks, bonds, derivatives, you name it. And once it's tokenized, you can plug it into these smart contracts, which are basically just code that executes automatically based on pre-agreed rules. Think arbitrarily complex legal or financial agreements, but running on the blockchain without intermediaries.
So automating complex agreements, cutting out middlemen. That's the potential game changer.
That's the big vision, yes. It could reshape industries from finance to supply chains, real estate, anything involving complex contracts and verification.
Okay, but Ethereum, institutionally speaking, it feels like it's lagged behind Bitcoin for a while, hasn't it?
It has, but that seems to be changing. The argument now is that Ethereum is actually the largest beneficiary of regulatory tailwinds.
How so?
Well, look at stablecoins and other high-quality liquid assets in the crypto space. Something like 90% of them already live on Ethereum.
90%, wow.
Yeah. Only about 10% is split among all the other blockchains combined. So this concentration creates this huge gravitational pull. More assets naturally want to settle where most of the activity and liquidity already is. Plus, increasing regulatory clarity, especially around things like stablecoins, mostly benefits Ethereum because that's where they predominantly are.
Got it. So network effects and regulatory clarity are kind of pushing it forward.
Precisely.
All right, shifting gears again, from digital assets to the really deep tech, quantum computing. CI Quantum is making waves. They're putting over $1 billion into building the country's first utility-scale quantum computer in Chicago, of all places.
$1 billion. That's a serious commitment.
It is. Now, quantum computing, we've heard the hype for years, right? It always feels a bit like science fiction, breakthroughs that don't quite materialize into usable tech.
And you're right to be skeptical of the hype. Because the reality often is, these big breakthroughs, they usually lead to a decade, maybe more, of just really hard engineering work.
Okay.
But CI Quantum's story is a bit different. Their core breakthrough actually happened about a decade ago. They figured out how to essentially leverage the existing semiconductor industry, all those trillions of dollars invested over like a century to build their quantum computer.
Using silicon photonics, right?
Exactly, their silicon photonics platform. The goal isn't just a small demo. They're aiming for a 1 million qubit scale, fault-tolerant, utility-scale quantum computer. That's the key phrase, utility scale.
Okay, break that down. What does utility scale really mean in this context?
It means a machine capable of solving actual, complex, real-world problems that are impossible for today's classical computers. Think drug discovery, materials science, complex financial modeling. The analogy they use, which I quite like, is that it's not a race where everyone's building little ladders trying to get to the top of the Sears Tower. Those are the small demo systems. They see themselves as building a rocket to go to the moon. It's a fundamentally different scale, a different approach aimed at practical application much sooner.
A rocket, not a ladder. I
Right.
like that. Helps clarify the ambition. And Chicago seems key for them. They mentioned strong partnerships there, government, even the power utility.
Which you'd need for something this massive. The power requirements alone are probably staggering. It shows they're thinking about the practical implementation at scale, not just the lab work. You need that kind of infrastructure support.
Absolutely. Okay, let's widen the lens now to the current big tech earnings season. Things are looking pretty frothy. NASDAQ Q100, S&P 500 at record highs. S&P trading at, what, 22 times forward earnings? That's a high DAR.
A very high bar. Highest in about 3 years, apparently. It puts a lot of pressure on these companies to not just meet, but significantly beat expectations. And a huge part of that run-up has been driven by AI spending narratives. That's boosted companies like Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA significantly.
Right, AI is the magic word.
It really is. But even within the big names, the Mag 7, you're seeing a split, aren't you? Some are flying, others not so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of that split, Tesla really stands out as a key laggard among that group. The stock's been struggling. This is even with Elon Musk saying he's working constantly, he's sleeping at the office again. And the reasons seem tied to, well, Elon Musk's wild bets, as one source put it, and maybe his public feuds, like with Trump. He's got this hard pivot away from just cars towards robo-taxis, a super competitive field where they aren't necessarily the leader.
Right. A big bet, shifting focus.
Then there's SpaceX's Starship. 3 explosions in test flights. Raises timeline questions. And xAI, his AI venture, reportedly behind competitors like OpenAI, Anthropic, and apparently losing huge sums of money.
It's a lot of very high-risk, capital-intensive projects happening all at once. Combined with his very public persona, it creates what one source called a dangerous recipe for investors right now.
Yeah. And it brings up that whole challenge of his time, right?
Yeah.
How does he split focus between Tesla, X, SpaceX?
Exactly. You hear reports that employees at each company feel like their company is his main priority, which probably isn't sustainable. And it leads to these, frankly, wild suggestions from some investors that maybe Tesla needs to give Musk even more equity to get him to spend more time there.
Even with the stock lagging, that's counterintuitive.
It really is, but it shows how central his involvement is perceived to be, for better or worse, in navigating these massive challenges and pivots. It highlights the founder dependency risk, I suppose.
Definitely. And beyond just Tesla, there's this broader regulatory risk hanging over big tech, isn't there? Especially when markets get so concentrated. You have single stocks making up 8% or more of the S&P 500.
Yeah, that essentially paints a target on their backs for antitrust scrutiny, other regulations. It's almost inevitable when companies get that dominant.
And globally, investors are looking beyond the U.S., too. Mentions of companies like TSMC in Taiwan.
Right, Taiwan Semiconductor. Crucial player. And the general idea of looking at non-dollar assets, diversifying away, especially if the dollar might weaken, spreading the risk.
Makes sense. Wow, okay. We have covered a lot of ground today, from AI making coding easier to the complexities of crypto and Ethereum, the bleeding edge of quantum, and the perpetual drama of big tech earnings. Hopefully you feel like you've gotten a real shortcut to being informed on some super dynamic areas in tech right now.
Absolutely. And if you connect it all, it's clear the future isn't just about the next shiny innovation, is it? It's also about navigating just immense complexity, dealing with security challenges, and sometimes the sheer force of, well, individual visionaries driving things forward. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How will all these different threads, AI, crypto, quantum, regulation, how will they converge and reshape our digital world in the next few years? What new industries and what new problems will emerge?
That's a great thought to end on, something for all of us to keep thinking about. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope it sparked some ideas, and we encourage you to keep exploring these topics.